Hello and welcome everyone to my webinar today. This is Glenn Kendall with Concourse hosting, and the webinar is going to be Tableau Paint by Numbers, Building an Executive Dashboard. I'm going to wait a couple of minutes just for stragglers to come in. I'll give you a high level of what we're going to be doing today. So this is really designed for folks that are fundraisers, that are, advancement departments, nonprofits. We specialize in those that happen to use Razor's Edge, but if your organization doesn't use Razor's Edge, you use a different platform, I still think you can get a lot out of this. What we're doing is just at a pretty basic level right now. But really, the series that we're going to be doing, that I'm going to be doing on a weekly basis, is going to be focused on giving you the tools you need to start to build out Tableau dashboards and worksheets for your organization that are centered on, fundraising activities. This is me on a sunny day. It is a sunny day here in Seattle, but it is cold outside. So, and I found a new little friend up there at the top, Dashi. Dashi is a character on this show called Octonauts, which I was introduced to by a friend over the weekend who happens to have a 3-year-old son, and he is completely and utterly obsessed with this show called Octonauts. And this is my favorite character on Octonauts. Her name is Dashi. She is the IT specialist of the group, because you always need an IT specialist to help make things go right. Some basic housekeeping here. If you are new to webinars or new to GoToWebinar, there's this big, seemingly unwieldy control panel that is launched and is on your screen. You can minimize the control panel by hitting that little red or orange arrow at the top, and that just collapses it to the side so that you can see more of what's happening. And you can always click that arrow again to pop it back out. If you have questions, go ahead and enter the questions in the area notated here. Typically what I like to do is I'll start out, brief introduction, do a few slides, and then what I'll do is I'll jump right into the Tableau building, just starting from scratch, building in Tableau, and then save questions for the end. So I'll save about 15 minutes or so at the end for your questions. So if you go ahead and type it in, you can type it in now if you think of it, but don't think I'm ignoring you. We'll just take your question at the end. All right, well, it's 3 after. I'm going to go ahead and just start at least with the high-level stuff, and then we'll dive into the paint by numbers and actually building stuff in Tableau to start with. So executive dashboards, best practices. What kinds of things should you do if you're making an executive dashboard? First and foremost, you need to build things to your audience, which is to keep it simple. Not to say that executives don't need details, but the thing with Tableau is that you can easily get carried away with adding a lot of filters and a lot of different interactivity points, and you don't want to make it confusing. You don't want to make people have to think. You just want them to be able to get a quick glance, maybe have a few simple things to click through, but for the most part, just give the numbers. The other thing too, I read an article recently it hit a bunch of different trade magazines, but it was based on some research that Forrester had done this past year, saying that executives actually don't trust analytics. By and large, it was like almost 2/3 of executives don't trust analytics. And it's a really interesting finding. I'm not going to go into a lot of details on it, but I think one of the takeaways I took from that is that what executives were having problems with is they just want to see the numbers. If you're trying to do some kind of analysis and trends and stuff and sort of bearing what the actual raw numbers are underneath that, that's not going to make them happy. Just give the basic numbers, no analytics. You can do analytics, the separate dashboards and stuff, but just for your basic dashboards, forget the analytics. And then also, think about what it is that you're focusing on. And I put on here donations versus pipeline versus finance. And this is really looking at, sales, if you will, what donations have come in. These are things that have been logged and registered in the system. So this is just money in the door, basically. And this is what we're going to be focusing on today, fundraising and money in the door. Another thing that you can look at is pipeline. We're going to look at that next week, looking at solicitor performance. What is potentially coming in the door down the road? But that's a separate thing, and that should be tracked separately. And finance is yet another thing. After the money comes in the door, where does it go? Does it get applied to this fund or that fund? All that sort of thing. Again, that's not what we're going to be covering today. That's more of a back office or a finance department view of things. For now, we're looking at just, again, fundraising, money in the door, how's our revenue? Anytime you build something in Tableau, it should always be to answer a question. The question we're going to be answering today, as best we can, is where are the donations coming from? We'll give some context to this, be looking at perhaps in relation to goals. Or you could also look at trends. How are we doing right now versus last year? Do we tend to see a lot of giving at certain parts of the year? That kind of thing. And maybe there's some key related metrics to that. We're not going to get into that a lot today, but there may be things that you want to track, like what are your number of major donors? How does that vary from year to year? How's your annual fund donations, recurring donations, things like that. The biggest challenge we run into when we try to build things in Tableau, and it's not Tableau, it's just across the board, but you really see it when you start to look at things in Tableau, because it sort of takes the covers off of the data. It's really trying to get at the coding, I guess you could say, and there's really a lack in Razor's Edge, at least, of what I call channel coding. And the channel coding is, how is the money coming in? Is it coming in from major gifts? Is it coming in from annual fund? Is it coming in from events? Where is this money coming in from a channel standpoint? And we're going to try to track it today looking at something else. But this is something that we run into time and time again, is that there isn't consistent coding of channels across, in Razor's Edge, or at least it's not used consistently. And what people tend to do a lot is attributes. There's, constituent attributes, gift attributes, and there's all these attributes kind of going crazy with the attributes in there, to the point where, sometimes we feel like when we're trying to report on that, it's like breaking the Enigma code. There's so many different attributes in there. I think in Razor's Edge there is something called campaigns, and I think people by and large don't use campaigns because they get caught up on the word campaign. I think you can actually use campaigns to code your gifts by channel. So you can just set up a campaign for events, a campaign for major gifts, a campaign for annual fund, whatever else you want to track, and just think of that as the big buckets of things coming in. Don't worry about, campaign in terms of effort, like we have a capital campaign or whatever. You're tracking those anyway separately through funds or through attributes and whatnot. And then, I think the last challenge is really, struggling with data quality. A lot of times what happens on the fundraising side is there's not a lot of attention put into the data quality itself. You're it's a little loosey-goosey in terms of the attributes and how things are coded. And I think, you know, try to draw some, you know, draw some expertise or draw on some of the things that the folks in the finance department are doing to track things, because, you know, they have to get the numbers right. You know, everything has to be, you know, has to be audited, and, you know, the money has to go somewhere in the end and be assigned to a fund or whatever. But the money coming in the door, sometimes just as far as coding how it's coming in, there needs to be more attention paid to that. And finally, just I think on the approach, especially if you're new to Tableau, you know, don't get too hung up on how pretty it looks. You know, it's okay to start out with things that aren't beautiful to start with. It doesn't need to be perfect either. The idea is to just familiarize yourself with it, get something going, and then you can refine things over time based on, you know, your increasing knowledge and user feedback. Okay, enough of that. I am going to pop over to Tableau and get us going here. All right, well, I said I wasn't going to do questions till the end, but somebody asked a question. Will these slides be available after the presentation? Sure, I can make these slides available after the presentation. I'm also recording this, so the recording will also be available if you want to listen and watch it later. Okay. Here we go in Tableau. This is something that I already made, but we're going to start from scratch here. So I'm going to go into Tableau and say New. So what I have here is Tableau Desktop. Tableau has a couple of products. There's Tableau Desktop and Tableau Server. So just at a high level, Tableau Desktop is the program that you would use in order to build things. It's kind of like, if you're familiar with Crystal Reports, it's kind of like there's a Crystal Reports builder program, and then there's Crystal Reports just running the report afterwards. So in Tableau Desktop, we build the reports, and then what we do is we publish them to Tableau Server so that it can be shared and run and used by other people. So here's my blank canvas. I start out here, and the first thing I need to do before I do anything else is connect to data. So in this particular case, I'm going to connect to our Tableau Server. Now here at Concourse, we have a service that we provide called Concourse Ascend that is Tableau Server. You get your own site in Tableau Server, and we take your data from Razor's Edge and put it and refresh it within the Tableau Server environment. So it's available to you in here. We have several data sources. I'm going to click on GIF data. And so now I have some data available there. So there's a whole lot of fields in here. Don't get hung up on this. If you yourself are just starting out, you're wondering, you know, what field should I start with? Really, the only fields, as you'll see in a minute, that I'm going to be using today is, you know, the GIFs themselves, the GIF date, and the GIF type. You know, that's pretty much it. We're just going to start with some real basic stuff here. All right. In Tableau Desktop, things are broken down into dimensions and measures. Don't get too hung up on this, but basically the idea is that measures are things like numbers, and dimensions are things like time. So I'm going to grab gross revenue. So gross revenue, in this case, is just a field that refers to the amount of gifts coming in the door. So I'm going to pull that over here into my rows. You can just drag and drop. And on this side, I'm going to find GIF date. Go to my dimensions and go to GIF date and pull that over to columns. Okay, so what I'm looking at here is basically all the data that's in the database, all GIFs from the beginning of time in this particular case. For this database, all the money they've ever brought in. That's a lot of data. That's probably too much data, especially for an executive. We don't want to look at all this. This is way too much information. So instead, what we're going to do is we're going to filter it. So there's this little box over here called filters. So what I can do is I can drag this time slice that I brought over there and drag it over to filters. And then I can say, okay, what do I want to look at? Range of dates, years, months, seconds, whatever, relative dates. I'm just going to choose relative dates. And, you know, in this case, really, we're just looking at years. I want to say, you know, basically, how did we do last year? 2016, what was 2016 like? So I'm going to do that. And boom, now I filtered it. I'm looking at all the data in one column here. There it all is. We raised this much money in 1 year. Yay, we're done. Hope you like your executive dashboard. No, it's, you know, let's see what else we can do with this. You know, what happened was is that when I took the gift date and I drug it over to filters, it moved it. You can see it was in here, and now it moved over to there. If I want to copy it instead, what I can do is, of course you can't see this, but if I hold down the control button on the keyboard and then I drag it over, it makes a copy of it instead of moving it. Okay? All right, so now we're filtering. We're just looking at last year, so I can say here's the gift date. It's just 2016. And here is all the gifts, like on a day-by-day or minute-by-minute basis, which is probably, you know, it's interesting at one level, but it's really not what we're looking for. We want to break it down more by, say, yeah, we don't necessarily want exact date. Let's go with month. Okay. So here it is by month. We see it went up, it went down, it went up, it went up, way up here in the middle, probably fiscal year, and then, you know, and then end of year goes up again. So this gives us, you know, a month-by-month look at donations. But if I'm an executive, I'm probably really interested in, like, what is the total money in the door? This is interesting as well, but I also want to know what's the total. What I can do in Tableau is I'll click on this till here for the sum of the gross revenue. And I'm going to add a table calculation. So they have these different calculations you can do. And what I'm interested in here is the running total, right? How much money accumulating over the year is this all adding up to? So that looks a little bit better. That's pretty good view there. So this is a line. I'm going to look at it. I can look at it in different ways here. I'm going to look at it as an area chart. More colors better. I can see more what's going on. So now I have a little bit of color going on here, and I can see, okay, here's basically all the money in the door for the year. Great. Well, where's this money actually coming from? So this is the problem I was talking about earlier. You know, there's no good way, unless you have set up your gifts to use some kind of, you know, criteria where you're breaking it down in terms of, you know, what if the channel it is it's coming in by, you're going to have a hard time presenting that. In lieu of that, I'm going to use gift type. I'm going to drag gift type over to the filter. So I can, and we know with gift type that we're probably, in this case, because we have all the gifts in here, we're probably double counting things, right? If we have pledge and then pledge pay cash, we're probably double counting things. So I'm just going to click on just the basic stuff here. I'm going to go with cash, gift in kind, major gift pledge, pledge, plan gift. I won't do whatever. You can do adjustments, I guess. I'm not going to do adjustments for now. All the pay stuff I'm going to keep out. Recurring gifts, stock. Okay, so I filtered that, and now there's less, right? There's less money than there was before, probably because we were double counting things. So this is something that you want to make sure that when you're building things, you're applying the correct filters, not only over time, but gift types and things like that, to make sure that you're looking at, the real dollars versus potentially double counting things. And so I want to give a little bit more visibility into this. So what I can do is with my gift type here, I can drag it down to the color field. So what I did was I took the gift type that was in filters and I just drug it down to the marks, and then it applies colors to my revenue. So now I can see where my revenue came from. Did it come from cash? Did it come from planned gifts, pledge, whatever? And it's broken down this way. So you notice maybe the thing what happened is that now I've suddenly got adjustments and a bunch of other things. I forgot to hit Control when I did that. So when I drug it down, it actually removed the filter. So now I'm counting everything again. Notice my number went way back up. Right? I'm at 65 million, so I'm double counting again, even though I added this. So when you make a mistake in Tableau, what you can do is you can just hit this back arrow here, and this will take you right back to where you were. And now I can hold down my Control button and then drag it down here, do it again, and yay, that's a little better. The number didn't change, and now I've added a little bit of color to it. So one of the things I'm noticing here is that there's really 3 big slices of data. There's some smaller ones in here. For some reason, we have pledge, and then we have MG pledge as a really small slice. It's probably the same thing, and ideally the data would be, in such a way that, it's coded properly, so the major giving pledges are the pledges. But just for making things a little bit cleaner today, I'm not going to worry about that. So I'm going to say, you know what, MG pledges, I don't care, you're gone. Get rid of gift in kind, get rid of stock, get rid of recurring gift, because these are just so small, they're not really making a difference. So again, just in terms of the demo today, I'm going to remove them. And there I have a very desert-looking graph. And I'm really only looking at 3 things. I'm looking at cash, planned gift, and pledge. Now, one thing you can do with your filters, you can say show filter. So if you want, you could give the end user the capability, when you publish this, what you do with show filters, you let them choose. You can say, well, I don't want to have the responsibility of choosing. By golly, if they want to see stock, we'll let them click stock, and there it is, this little tiny slice down at the bottom. It's included. I think really for executive dashboards, it's probably better not to include these, that you get clear up front what it is that you want, and you don't allow it to be changed. So I can say hide card, and there it goes away. But if I still want to be able to see what these different areas are without having a filter, I can show it as a legend instead. So I can go up here to Analysis, Legends, Color Legend, and then I have a legend that shows up over there instead. I can change the colors if I want. And just pick these automatically. There's different templates or palettes you can choose from. Pick your own. I like Superficial Stone. I think it's a person who her last name is Fishel, who works at Tableau. I was at the Tableau conference, and that rings a bell. There was somebody by that name there. Cash will make greenish. Planned gift will make brownish. Pledge will make bluish. There we go. There's also things, you know, colorblind, grays. You know, you can pick the palettes that work best for you there. Okay. You know, I like what I have here now, and at this point, you know, you get to the point where this is pretty good, and you kind of get into, all right, we're going to do some formatting now. But in terms of just the fields that we're looking at, again, so we're only doing 3 fields: the amount of money in the door, the date, the gift type. That's it. That's all we're looking at. I can edit the axis. What does that do? Well, I can get rid of this title, for one. I don't want that. I already know what I'm looking at. I don't need to say recurring sum of gross revenue. Don't need that. Also, maybe format this. This takes a little getting used to, just where things are at, but it's, you know, not too different than what you might do in Excel. We'll do it in terms of millions. I don't want any decimals. Make it bigger. Make it even bigger, because my eyes are terrible. Heck, we can even make it bold. Are you making it bold? It made it bold. Okay. Cool. What about the bottom axis? Let's change that. Edit axis. Same thing here. I don't need to say months. It's pretty clear. We're talking about months. Format. Format. I'm going to do same deal. 20 point. Bold. Boom. There we go. And, you know, if I don't want to do months, if I want to do quarters, I can just, from the pill here, I can change it to quarters. Okay. I'm liking this. Let's add one more thing here. We can add a reference line. What's a reference line? It's just a line that, you know, we might want to just have to give some reference to what are we shooting for here? Is this, so we raised 40 million or whatever? Is that good? You know, is that a lot? Is that not a lot? Like, what is that? So we can assign a reference line for, and maybe have a goal. I have a goal parameter in here now, but I'm not sure what it is. It just kind of was there with the data set. So I'm going to make a parameter, a new parameter. So you can just make a parameter. I'm going to say 2016 goal. Okay. Float, probably don't need to be a float. Integer is probably good. 40 million. And we're going to make that as currency, no decimals. Okay, so at this point, this is just a parameter. It's just like a variable I'm making. So now I go back to the axis here on the left. I'm going to add a reference line. And the line is the one I just made here, 2016 goal. And yay, there it is. It's so, look, we beat the goal. Yay. But it's so small, it's hard to see. My executives want to see clear things. Let's make the line green or red. Make it green. Should we do solid? We can do dots, dashes. I'll do dashes because of dashy. Okay. And goal. We're going to edit this because, I mean format. That's what I meant. I'm going to format this. Format. Bigger, please. There we go. Now we can see it. 20-point font. Great. Now we have a reference line, so we can see now where we are. How did we do in 2016? That was pretty good. Looks like we beat our goal. Yay. All right. So it's 11:30. At this point, I've made one worksheet. I'm going to make, and I want to make a dashboard. So I like where I'm at here. I'm going to stop on this particular worksheet. I'm going to make another couple of smaller worksheets and then make a dashboard. But before I do that, I just want to explain a little about within Tableau, like what are these things that we're talking about here. So in Tableau itself, you know, this whole thing that we're working on is a workbook. It's sort of like in Excel. You can have an Excel document and you can have multiple tabs within Excel. So this sheet here, called Sheet 1 by default, this is a worksheet within the workbook. So I'm going to rename this sheet graph. And if I'm not dyslexic, I would spell graph like this. Okay. I can make another sheet just by clicking on this. And now it's like I'm starting from scratch here, starting over again. I can delete it. This is a new worksheet. There's also a dashboard. I'll make that in a minute. There's also something called a story. It's kind of like an Excel, not Excel, it's kind of like a PowerPoint. You're going to have multiple sort of slides together that are going to tell a story about something. That's what that is. So we're going to make a dashboard in a minute, but for making my other worksheet, I can either start from scratch like I did, just click on New Worksheet, or I can take this and say duplicate. Why would I want to duplicate versus making a new sheet? Well, I just went to all the trouble to create those filters, to, you know, the dates, all that sort of stuff. I would have to do all that again, and I'm too lazy. I don't want to do that again. I don't know if this would be easy or not, but I think it's a good idea just to duplicate things because you're at a known point, right? You don't have to recreate all your work again. All right, so the next thing I'm going to do is I just want to have a number that just tells me how much money we've raised for the year. So that's not going to be a graph. So I need to get rid of my graph, start getting rid of stuff here. Bye-bye, gift type, and goodbye you. So instead of having this in a graph form, I'm going to pull it down here and make it just a number. Now it's just like within Excel, just a number in here. Let's format this. Maybe I can. I'm trying to find, there's a little line, bottom line here that I want to make bigger. I'm just trying to move my mouse slowly over these. There we go. Format. I'm going to make this currency. I'm going to make it in millions. I'm going to make it 1 decimal. I am going to make it bigger, 20, about 24 bold. Sheet 2, don't need it to say sheet 2, I just want a number. Okay. So this is the total money we've raised for the year. Seems kind of silly just to have a whole worksheet that's just this one thing, but it is useful for the dashboard, which you'll see in a minute. Okay. I'm going to rename this year to date. Not really accurate because the year's over, but close enough. Oh, and I spelled it year-aught date. What happens if you're dyslexic? We'll just leave it there because it's kind of funny. All right. we're going to duplicate this now. And year auth date in sheet 3. Okay, so now I'm going to look at, for this one, I want to see how did we do versus our goal. So here I'm just looking at a number, but I want to look at a percentage. I want to see if I divide this total, divide by that 2016. Is that what I called it, 2016 goal? Where is it? 2016 goal. Nope, I did something wrong here. Tableau tries to help you, tries to fill things in, and figure it out for you. You know, in this case, you know, the parameter itself is put in these brackets. And so I had a typo there. All right, so, and now it's in the wrong format, so we need to format it. And it's not a number, it is now a percentage. And we'll leave it at 1 decimal place because that's fine. And this one is percent of goal. I know some of you are not happy right now because of what I'm doing in here. You can't really see it, so I'm going to maybe put this in just Notepad. So this is what I did. The pill itself that Tableau was using was just called running sum of the sum of the gross revenue. So sum of the gross revenue is just, again, the amount of money in the door. All I did was add divided by 2016 goal. Tableau put these brackets around it because that's a parameter. And then the whole thing together is how we're going to look at the percentage. Okay. So that's it. I have 3 sheets now. I have a graph, year auth date, percent of goal. All right. Dashboard. A dashboard is what? A dashboard is a collection of worksheets. Dashboard can do a lot of different things, but as soon as you click on dashboard here and make a new dashboard, that one of the things you'll see right off the bat is that the sheets that I made are available here on the left. And what it wants me to do is to say, okay, why don't you grab these sheets and put them over in the dashboard. So I'll do that. I'll drag the graph over first, and then year auth date I'll put above, and percent of goal I'll put over here to the right. There's my dashboard. You can format things a little better. Maybe make it a little bigger. Oops, don't like that. I can't see my legend anymore. So you have limited real estate here. One of the things you can do, you know, we have our legend, which is floating over here. It's not floating, actually. It's fixed. There's a term. I'm going to make it floating. So right now it's not floating, and it's taking up all this real estate over here on the right. If I make it floating, then it detaches, and I can move it around and put it somewhere. And, you know, I can dump it over here if I want to, whatever. So I'll just do that for now, just to get it out of the way. But then within the dashboard here, you know, at this point it's just formatting. I can move things around. I can say, you know, I want to edit the title. Instead of using the sheet name, which I spelled wrong, we'll say 2016 revenue. Move things up a little bit more. We don't need this to say graph. We can hide that. And another thing we can do over here is, this can be optimized for different sizes. You can go with a generic desktop, or you can optimize it for going on, a laptop, different formats here. So you can play around with that. There's other things that you can do in the dashboard as well that I'm not going to show you as far as actions. So like when you click on one sheet, it can trigger something in another sheet. I think that's more advanced dashboard stuff. I'm not going to worry about that right now. But, I think the point is here, I just want to show you, whatever. In half an hour, I was able to throw together this basic executive dashboard that's just showing, how we did, and this can be modified for 2017 to show how we're doing. And how does that happen? Well, what we can do then, once this is done, we can publish it. So we can publish it up to the server. And in the server, there's different folders called projects. I have one there called Jam. And this one I'll call Tableau Webinar, January 5, 2017. Publish. And there it is. So within Tableau, I'm not going into a lot of detail in here, but this is now we're looking at Tableau Server now. And so yes, somebody asked, let me see if I can make this bigger. How do you share the dashboard if you don't have Tableau Server? Not easily is the answer to that. There's something called Tableau Reader. So you can do what I just did, build it in Tableau, and then save it, and then email it to somebody, and then they can get Tableau Reader, and then they can open it and look at it on there. You kind of go through, when you get Tableau, these different, phases of your, it's sort of like from caterpillar to the pupa to the butterfly sort of thing. When you first get Tableau Desktop, you're just looking at all the cool stuff that you can make in Tableau, and that's what your focus is. And that's fine. You can do that. The next step after that is you say, okay, I want to be able to share it. How am I going to share this with people? You can do what I said there. The other thing you can do is you can export this. You can print it to a PDF. Things like that. So what that's going to do is it's like a one-time snapshot of it. The reason you want to use Tableau Server is two reasons. One, you can easily share the data so that they can just click on a link, open a web page, and they can see it. It's easily shareable. That's one reason. The second is that the data will be refreshed. So in this case, we're just looking at 2016 data. It doesn't matter. It's not going to change. That's it. But if you're saying, how are we doing so far this year, as you probably want an executive dashboard to be, you want that data to refresh on a regular basis. Well, you'd have to go do another export of data out of your data source, Razor's Edge or whatever, refresh your Tableau worksheets and dashboard, republish, print it back out, save it back out, and then share it out. It's just more work. So it really depends on what it is that you're trying to do with it and how many people you're trying to share it with. Okay, well that was our, I guess we're at 11:45 now. I promised some time for questions. That's all that I'm going to do as far as the building part. So if you do have any questions, go ahead and type them in there. And I encourage you to stick around and listen to the questions. Sometimes these can be very educational, just as informative as what I just went through. There's a lot of sophisticated things that you can do within the dashboard itself. You can add images, and like I said, there's actions and whatnot that you can have it do, so that if you were to click on something in here, you can have these values up here refresh based on what you selected in here, for example. Any other questions? You gotta have some questions. Don't be bashful. I'm sorry, I missed the first few minutes. What are our options to get Tableau Desktop? Do we just obtain it via Tableau, or is there a way to get it through you? Yeah, so basically you buy it through Tableau. Yeah. If you want to get Tableau Desktop, that's something that you just go ahead and you can purchase directly through Tableau. If you have a TechSoup, I know it's available depending on your organization size through TechSoup. So depending on the amount of revenue your organization makes, there is a special deal you can get through TechSoup and be able to purchase it through there. Is there an option to format the dashboard for a phone? Will it auto-scale at all? Yes, it does auto-scale. In this case, I am doing a fixed size, but I can say automatic. And the dashboard will resize to fit any screen it's displayed on. I didn't show that on purpose. I was really hoping someone would ask that question. Thank you for asking that question, Steve. This is actually a new feature they added recently into Tableau. So yeah, this is really cool to be able to do this. And of course you need to test it, because if you end up cramming a bunch of stuff into your dashboard, you'll have to look at it and say, even though it's reformatting, is it still looking okay on a mobile device? But yeah, just up here under the size, if you pick automatic, it automatically does that. But yeah, you can also choose a fixed size as well. And make it specifically for, a smaller type device, just depending on the, the resolution of your choice here. How do you think Tableau compares to Microsoft BI? How does it compare to Microsoft BI? Well, let's see. How does Paint compare to Photoshop? That might be a little bit harsh. I think Microsoft BI is starting to do some cool things, but right now Microsoft BI is pretty basic in terms of what it can do. It really depends on what you want. But I think Tableau is really the leader in terms of all of the things that you can be able to do for a reporting and visualization tool. Let's see, next question. What are the most common types of reports for nonprofits and their templates for reports and worksheets? That's a really good question. I don't know. I think we're going to start to address some of those things in the upcoming weeks. The next one that we're doing is one on solicitor performance. So at the beginning of the webinar, I was talking about donations versus pipeline versus finance. So this here, we're just looking at donations, just like money that's already come in the door. So another type of report you might be interested in is your pipeline. And what is your pipeline? For you advancement people, it's your major giving. So, so that's what we're going to be looking at next week is the pipeline and solicitor performance. Other things might be things like appeal performance. How is your appeals doing? And be able to break that down in terms of, response rates, a lot of different criteria that you can look at there. Is Tableau Server a separate product you have to buy in order to share your workbooks with coworkers? Or does it come with Tableau Desktop? Tableau Server is a separate product. You would have to buy that from Tableau, or you can get it through us. Now, we have a copy of Tableau Server that is basically an enterprise version. And what we do is we have a service where we give you your own site within our Tableau Server. And we set it all up by pulling your Razor's Edge data using, and creating these data sources and refreshing it for you automatically. So you can get Tableau Server. It comes in a couple of different varieties, if you will. One is just like regular software you buy from them and you have to install, have your IT install. Or they have a cloud product, Tableau Online, that you can use that instead. The real problem you're going to run into, though, is refreshing your data and being able to do that on a regular basis. And that's where we come in. Through our service, Tableau Ascend, we are refreshing the data that's pushed to the back end of Tableau so that when you're building things, the data is automatically refreshed. How do you push this out via email to management on a schedule? Can the dashboard be an embedded image? Yeah, they can within Tableau Server. You can subscribe to a worksheet or a dashboard so that when it updates, so I can subscribe to this here. And then what you do is you set up schedules and whatnot in the background. So you can say, set up a schedule that on a daily basis they get an email that has a link to this, and that way it's just done automatically, or weekly, or whatever. And you can subscribe others. In this case, this is just subscribing me, but I have an option here where I can say subscribe others, and I can type in, Steve. I can type in your email address and subscribe you to this, and send you an email every day. And I know Tableau is working on a new feature where they're going to be coming out with this sometime this year, where it will send a new email only when something changes. Now, in this case, that's probably not going to matter because, you want the dashboard updated on a regular basis, maybe even daily or, weekly at least basis. So, executives might not, if not a lot's going to change, they're only going to look at it maybe once a week. But other things, like an appeal performance report, something like that, it would be nice to get an email so that people will know that something has changed and there's something new for them to go in and look at. These are all great questions, by the way. Actually within, I don't want to go too far down this, but within Tableau Server itself, there is actually a Lite version, if you will, of Tableau Desktop. So you can create and do some basic formatting and things you can do in Tableau Desktop. You can do real basic stuff in Tableau Server itself. It has a Lite Tableau Desktop editor in there. You can't do the full-blown formatting and actions and dashboards and all of that, but that's something they keep adding more and more features to. So I think, if you're just starting out, if you already have Tableau Server with us, maybe play with that first. You don't necessarily have to get Tableau Desktop. Don't feel like you have to have that to do anything. You can build within Tableau Server, and then once you start to hit a wall and say, oh, well, there's certain things I can't do, how do I do this? Oh, I can only do it in Tableau Desktop. Oh, I really want to do that. So So then you can go ahead and get Tableau Desktop. But for those of you that were asking, if you already have Tableau Server with us, how do you do this with Tableau Desktop? We can walk you through that, or we can also show you, or in addition to both, to do those things in Tableau Server itself. Okay. Other questions? Well, I hope this was helpful and informative for everyone. I just want to, I'm not a Tableau expert. I am dabbling with this the same as all of you are. It just so happens maybe I've just dabbled with it a little bit longer than some of you. But don't feel like you have to know everything about Tableau and you have to take a course or whatever, to do some stuff in here. All I started with was 3 data fields. That's it. You can start with some real basic things and start building in Tableau. You don't need to be, a super advanced user to do this stuff. But next week, we're going to be focusing on solicitor performance. So, if you know anyone in your organization that is interested in tracking those things, be sure to tell them to sign up for that webinar. We'll send out an email reminder for that as well. That's specifically, for major giving and tracking solicitors. Okay, last call here for any more questions. You are very welcome. Thank you all for attending today. And again, this is going to be something happening on a regular basis. I'm going to be doing these, or somebody from Concourse will be doing a webinar on a weekly basis. We'll be recording them. So even if you can't sign up, go ahead. If you can't attend, go ahead and sign up, and you'll get a recording, of the webinar the day after. And so you can just go ahead and attend and watch it that way, if you will. Okay. Well, if there's no more questions, thank you all so much, and I will talk to you next week.